everyone. So welcome back to the second FDP program organized by Abbas Khan College of Women. Tell me and I forget. Teach me and I may remember. Involve me and I learn. With this quote, a very good afternoon to one and all present here and a warm welcome to all the participants, speaker and the guest of today's session. I, Ms. Noor Aisha, Deputy Coordinator of IQAC, very happy to invite you for the second 3 days online national level FDP on the theme multi-dimensional approach towards social issues. What's the point of having a mind if it does not mind the issues of the society? Where this FDP program aims on the social issues like gender sensitivity, cybercrime, and creating critical thinkers. Now, I request our leader, that's Professor Zubeda Begum, Principal Abbas Khan College for Women, to welcome the guest, speaker, and the participants of today's session. I request ma'am.
Good afternoon to one and all present here. Honorable Vice President of Central Muslim Association, Mr. Farooq Mahmood, the resource person of this inaugural session of 3 days faculty development program, Dr. Professor R. Indira Madam, dear participants and my dear colleagues. I, the principal of the college, deem it an honor to welcome and introduce the guests of this program. At the outset, I would like to welcome the esteemed Vice President of Central Muslim Association, Mr. Farooq Mahmood, who is with us to share our joy by inaugurating this 3 days national level faculty development program, which deliberates on the theme multi-dimensional approach towards social issues. He is a businessman of repute from 38 years, managing the Silver Line Realty Private Limited. His family trust, Silver Line Foundation, takes care of the social and economic needs of the weaker sections of the community and society by offering scholarships and medical assistance. He has been certified TRC and holds a degree in real estate principles and practice from University of Fullerton, Los Angeles, USA. He was elected to the Central Waqf Council, which is engaged in the development of Waqf properties across India. And also, he is the founder director Corporation Limited. He is one of the founder of the Bangalore Realtors Association of India and founding president of National Association of Realtors. And currently, he is the chairman of International Affairs of National Association of Realtors of India. He has not restricted his journey at national level, but has ventured into the global arena and served as international advisor and as a fellow of Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors. Like this, he represents many international boards. His success mantra is his professionalism, dedication, and transparency. With all this acumen in real estate, his concern for the cause of education is worth mentioning here. He has served as honorary vice chairman of Al-Amin Education Society, and now he is elected as vice president of Central to inaugurate this faculty development program. Sir, we are really honored to have you amidst us. On behalf of the college, the participants, I welcome you, sir. Now, we have another important personality with us to share her thoughts. And I feel honored to introduce our resource person, Dr. Professor R. Indira, to give insight into the issue of gender sensitivity, which is her area of study. In fact, she is the authority, I can say, to talk on this issue. Madam has strictly asked me not to read all her achievements, but with due respect to her words, I would like to highlight only a few. Madam Indira was formerly the professor and chairperson of the Department of Sociology at the University of Mysore and president of Indian Sociological Society. During her 42 years of service, she has produced 27 PhD scholars, authored many books and articles in journals, and has contributed to encyclopedias, dictionaries, books, etc. In fact, she is a columnist in the Kannada Daily Prajavani on issues of sociological significance. She has been conferred with literary awards and recognitions like Triveni Award, H.S. Parvati Endowment Award, and Sadodita Award. Presently, she is a member of Board of Governors of the Institute of Social and Economic Change. And she is a member of Advisory Board of SDM Institutions and Chairman of Institutional Review Board of the Research Wing of Asha Kirana Hospitals. Madam has worked as lead researcher in many national and international research projects. She is the recipient of 2 fellowships from US and 4 fellowships from Indo-Canadian Institute. She has been a visiting faculty in many US and Canadian universities. Madam is one of the three famous past Fulbrighters featured US Virtual Consulate launched by US in Bengaluru. Madam completed the work on English Kannada Glossary in Sociology published by National Translation Mission and is currently translating Anthony Giddens' Sociology into Kannada. She has coordinated the Society and Education course, an MHRD initiative under its National Mission on Education, and also worked as visiting professor in many national and international universities. Dear participants, like the above, I have many good things to say about Madam. But due to paucity of time, I stop here and give more time to Madam to speak on the issue. Madam, we are very fortunate to have you to deliberate on this topic. And on behalf of the management, college, participants, I wholeheartedly welcome you to this webinar. Before I close my welcome address, I would like to welcome the IKC coordinator, Dr. M.S. Vidya, and the program coordinators, Dr. Saida Tabassum, who is also the HOD of Commerce, and Professor Noor Aisha, HOD of Computer Science, and also all my senior and junior colleagues. I'll be failing in my duty if I don't acknowledge the presence of my dear participants from different colleges. I extend a warm welcome to them also. I once again welcome one and all to this session. Thank you.
Thank you, madam, for your warm welcome for the session. It's now my duty to welcome our esteemed member, that is the leader of the college, Professor Zubaida Begum, Principal Abbas Khan College for Women, for this session. I wholeheartedly welcome you, ma'am. If your action inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. With this quote, I request our esteemed member of the newly elected management member, Janab Farooq Mahmood, Vice President, CMA, Karnataka, to inaugurate this second 3 days online national level FDP. Sir, we are very, very particular about you inaugurating this program of our FDP. I request sir to unmute himself.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you, the moderator, for introducing me and allowing me to say a few words. It's my pleasure to be here.
Raise the volume. We are not able to. You are not audible to us, sir.
Can you hear me now? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me now, please?
Yes, sir. You're audible.
Thank you. Thank you, the faculty members and the teachers who've taken time out from their busy schedule to do this program. I think it's a wonderful program to have. And I think the theme of the event is a multi-dimensional approach towards social issues. This has been a long pending issue, and I think you can discuss this for years together and still not come to any kind of a conclusion. It's a very broad-based topic, and I think you've got great speakers there from what I can read or heard from you introducing them and your colleagues. I think it's a good way to start the year, and I hereby open and inaugurate this 3-day event, and I wish you all the success. Over to you, professionals, to take it over, and I don't want to bore you with more of my long speeches, and over to you. I wish you all the best, and I wish you all the success in this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir, for doing this honor of inaugurating the session of the second national level FDP program. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, miss.
Thank you, sir. Now I request our speaker of today's session, madam.
If I may be allowed to leave, I would proceed with my other things, and I wish all of you all the very best.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, miss.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Ma'am, you can unmute yourself, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, because it was not allowing me to unmute.
Okay, sorry, ma'am.
That's why I called and told Dr. Vidya. Thank
Yes,
you. Now you can hear me, no?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
It's all time is yours, ma'am, to
Yeah.
deliberate on the topic of gender sensitivity. You can start sharing your screen, ma'am.
No, I don't have a PowerPoint. I'll speak.
You just speak, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
Okay,
Very good.
okay.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Speaking is the power.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Namaste to all my friends here, Principal, Madam Principal of the college, Professor Zubeda Begum, Dr. Vidya, all my dear faculty colleagues, participants, and friends. Thank you very much for this opportunity to be with you. Well, Abbas Khan College is not a new, not a new arena, if I may call it, for me, because I have been here at least 2 or 3 times earlier and have very fond memories of my visit here. And so it's a pleasure to be back again with all of you. And so this topic on which I would be speaking today has been discussed and talked about, written about many times. And of course, I must tell you that at least till about the last 25 years, gender was not an issue that was discussed either in public discourse or in academic platforms. Even as a student of sociology, which is my discipline, I remember that when I was a student, we used to just have one small unit called Status of Women in India. And all that we used to read is that, well, women's status is generally understood in 3 periods of time in the history of this country. The ancient period when everything was fine, the medieval period when the status, kind of altered and went down, and in the modern period, everything was okay. But it is only because, of the women's movement and the feminist movement, you see, that gained a big ground in 1975, especially after the declaration of the International Women's Decade, that women's studies, gender issues started entering the academic world. And we even began to say that you have to look at this society, the world, from the point of view of women. Otherwise, people would simply ask, what is so special? Why do you have to discuss everything by bringing about women? I remember, even in the academic staff college orientation programs or refresher courses, there used to be a topic. This happened, well, late 80s and early 90s and all that. That topic was called the problems of women. And we started protesting, why do you say problems of women? Why do you have to use the word problem the moment you talk of women? Please take that off and use the word gender issues. And especially after, the onset of the 21st century, the word gender has gained a lot of currency in discourses, public debates, in all disciplines. And of course, in understanding policy, in understanding the various things we do. So this is very briefly the background to why gender became, an independent issue for discussion, for understanding, for analysis in the recent past. Now, in the topic here today, I see 3 important words. One is gender, and of course, the general context, like what I say is multidimensional, and the word social issue. Though today's topic is just titled gender sensitivity, I would like to take up these 3 concepts first: gender sensitivity, multidimensional approach, and social issues, briefly, of course, to see the interlinkage between the 3. Now, let me start by talking about gender. Of course, all of us know very well that there is a major difference between the 2 concepts of gender and sex. Sex is about the biological makeup of people. You're born or you choose to be a male, female, or somebody from an LGBTQ community. But that is biology. And for centuries in this society, our biology is used as the basis to determine what we can do and what we can't do. It is our biology that keeps on reminding us, well, you are a female, you are a male, so you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to behave like this, you're supposed to speak like this, not to speak like that. And so biology was used as the base to allocate roles, to give us opportunity or take away opportunities from us and determine, who does what and who does not do what. But it's only after, we started looking at the world from the women's point of view. And this is a long history, it's not that it started only in the 18th century or 19th century or the 20th century. Of course, people wrongly, think that it's only in the modern age that women or groups or movements started questioning what you today call as gender inequality. It has been there. Literature abounds with examples. Cultural studies abounds with examples. Our own, sources of knowledge have enough material to tell us that at different points of time, there were voices that questioned the differences between men and women imposed on them. Karnataka itself, has the saint poetess Akkamahadevi, who in the 12th century raised that question of assigning women to certain roles because she has a female body. So from then on, if you keep on looking at history, if you keep on looking at literature, if you keep on looking at various other disciplines, especially literature and history, there have been examples of writers, thinkers who have been questioning this inequality that is thrust on certain genders because of their biology. So now coming to the next point, what is gender? What is it that we are talking of? Before you talk of sensitivity, let us see what gender means to us. Now, gender, is a social construct. It is imposed on us. It is one of the many ways by which this society practices inequality. We all live in an unequal society. At no point of time has human society, with the exception of a very few simple societies, been equal. There is a difference of age, there is a difference of status, power, right from the family, which you call as the smallest institution, to society at large. You will see that, some people always enjoy better opportunities, they have more power, they have more money, they have more resources at their control than others. And there are many, many factors which determine who has more money, who has more power, who gets more education, who, endures violence and who perpetrates or, engages in that kind of violence, etc. So what I'm trying to say is that this society is a divided society. It is an unequal society. But in our own country, the Constitution, just yesterday we have celebrated the Republic Day. And why is the Republic Day important for us? It's very important because we became a democracy. And the Constitution of India, starts with a very beautiful word which says, we the people of India. When you say we the people of India, what does it indicate? It indicates diversity. India is a multicultural, multilingual, multicaste, multi-religious society. And so by saying, we the people of India, the Constitution of this country recognizes that everybody is equal. That it recognizes the presence of everybody. You may belong to any part of the country. You may be a tribal, you may be a woman, you may be a man, you may be a Dalit, you may be belong to this religion or that religion. You may be a highly educated person, or you may not have had the opportunity to go to school also. Whoever you may be, whatever your situations in life are, the constitution of the country considers all of us as equal. So in theory, there should not be any difference between men or women or female or male. But in reality, it is there. Many people would like to argue, that, oh no, this gender, inequality, these people are talking so much about it. It is there in their mind. They are fixed, that men and women are not equal. So they go on and on and on. No, that's not the truth. The truth is that equal opportunities are there for all of us. In theory, there is no inequality in society. But in reality, there are many people who are in comfort zones. There are what I call unequal life chances. A sociologist once put it so beautifully when he said, the race for equality is not run among equals. We are all running the race to reach our goals, to realize our dreams, to translate our visions into realities. But why all of us don't get the same opportunity? So in the many forms of inequality that exist in our society, gender is one. And now gender is not something that is born with you. Your biological makeup, yes, leave it that side. But, when society keeps on telling you, you are a woman, you should be like this, you are female, or you are male. Or, now when you talk of gender, I want to make this very clear. We are not just talking of male and female, but we are talking of what we call a third gender, which is called LGBTQ. Lesbian, bisexual, gay, transgender, queer community. And today, in a lot of debates on gender, the word that is used is not just gender, but genders. You should use the word genders to indicate that it is your choice to be whatever. To your sexual orientation is your choice. And this is specifically applicable to the LGBTQ community. But, most people have in their mind what we call as gender stereotypes. Stereotype is that fixed idea. So gender basically is something that society imposes on you. It's not come with your biology. It puts that idea into your mind, that you are this and hence you should be like this. And look at the way culture has constructed gender. I remember, I came into the women's studies discourse from the women's movement. And whenever we went, whenever we protested, whenever we questioned, whenever there was a struggle, there are people who said, yeah, look at these women, they are behaving like men. Look at them. Can't they stay at home? Can't they, cook and take care of their families? Why are they in the streets? Why are they going, from one place to another, shouting, screaming, making noise? But please remember that it is only because somebody made noise. It is only because somebody questioned. It's only because somebody protested. It's only because movements came into existence. It is only because, very harsh lives were led by women for a very, very, very long time, and they continue to live. Aren't you hearing about the disgusting, sorry for using this word, called honor killings? What is this? You're murdering daughters, you're murdering sons, you're murdering people simply because they decide to exercise their choice to live their life. Rape law in this country took 175 years to be amended. And so, you see, please remember that gender is not something to do with biology, but it is something to do with society, culture. It is imposed on us. We are always being told, you know, you have to think like this. You have to behave like this. You have to talk like this. You have to do this. You cannot do this. So to question these gender stereotypes, as they are called, and it's not only on females, it is there on men, it is there on LGBT, it is there on different age groups, it is there on people of rural areas, people in urban areas, people in metro cities. So we all, you see, are victims of different types of stereotypes. You see, given the fact that in this country, we have a long history of girl children being, you know, kept away from school. People say, oh, you see, being a girl, she talks too much. Think of that. If you have gender sensitivity only, you ask this question, you know, why? Why should I not talk? You didn't allow me to talk. You didn't allow me to go to school. You didn't allow me to read the books. You didn't allow me to ask questions. But today, you know, the situation has changed. We have come a long way. I am definitely not one of those persons who will say that nothing has changed. I am also not one of those persons who will say that everything has changed. We are, you know, in a transition phase, you see. And also another point, now I'm moving to another point. Let me make it clear that no gender constitutes a homogeneous category. We generally look at male and female. And I understand that when you talked of gender sensitivity, you were mostly having women in mind. So I'll concentrate a lot more on that. See, why you look at women, for example, they are not one homogeneous group, you know. See, all of them face certain types of problems. An extremely rich woman, an extremely educated woman, an extremely well-placed woman also faces violence, whereas the poor woman who you know lives what I call, she ekes out a living by working hard, by struggling, by striving, faces violence. But other than that, you know, different groups of women have different issues. You're talking of social issues. What is a social issue? See, in the women's movement, there is a word called personal is political. This is one of the slogans of the women's movement. Why do I say personal is political? You know, always there was that line, you know, when I, as a woman, when I complained of something, they said, no, that's your personal issue. Dowry is not a personal issue. Marital violence is not a personal issue. Not being sent to school is not a personal issue. You know, it is there in the lives of millions of young girls. So don't say that when it comes to a female group, you know, it's all personal. When a young woman is being beaten, you know, for dowry, for various other reasons, people keep quiet. Yeah, it is their personal matter. It's not their personal matter. You can become gender sensitive only when you say, well, when there is injustice, I raise my voice. I ask a question. You have to look at the world. What is gender sensitivity? You look at the world from the point of view of the person. You know, there is a word which we all often use called empathy. Putting yourself in somebody's position and looking at the world. Look at the pandemic itself, for example. We have been talking so much about why you need to look at COVID-19 from a gender angle. People earlier thought COVID-19, okay, it's a pandemic, it's a disease. Only two reactions were there. People either died or people recovered. And they were like, we have become so scared of talking to each other, of looking at each other, of even looking outside the window. We are behaving as if we are not human beings. But do you think COVID has affected everybody the same way? You see, there is a word now being called shadow pandemic and the pandemic of violence. Now you have United Nations bodies and many others coming out with studies to show that millions of girls, across those emerging economies in Asia, Latin America, and Africa are out of school. Schools are closed, whether it is for boys or girls or anybody for that matter. And girls, are now facing a situation of forced to drop out. And I was really happy that, you see, including Karnataka, across the country in many states, the number of girls going to high school, the number of girls, going to higher levels of education was increasing. But suddenly, because of the pandemic, what happened was schools were shut and a large number of adolescent girls remained at home. And their parents were unsure of when those schools will open. What did they do? They got them married. Now, child marriages of girls below a proper age are all on increase across the world. Domestic violence has increased. You keep reading, in the newspapers that calls to helplines, calls to support systems across the world are on the increase. So to be even able to think, COVID is a social issue. Violence is a social issue. Poverty is a social issue. This is where I'm bringing now the multidimensional angle. Poverty is a social issue. Then there is, unemployment is a social issue. So COVID itself needs to be looked at from a multi-dimensional angle because it's a social issue. It's not personal. It's not that somebody, tested positive and that is that person's life. It's a social issue because it is a whole society that is affected. So there's nothing like, personal certain issues are there. Okay, we're not going to talk about that. But what applies to women is not all personal. You see, even to recognize that violence was a social issue, we took so many years. It is only after the 1980s in India that at least a few women, few young girls started coming out and talking about violence. But the family itself has been a center of violence for a very long time, and it continues to be. Today's paper talks about parents, killing their daughters. Can you ever imagine these things? We always say, okay, stay at home. Everything is very safe for you. It's not. To even imagine that everything at home is safe is not correct was shown by the pandemic itself. So gender, it is there. It's not simply a concept. People say, where is that gender? Show me. It is there in your mind. It's a mindset, but it is also a practice. See, just to give you one quick example, during the pandemic, everybody talked of work from home. Today also there are people talking of working from home. It's going on. Okay. And they said, okay, fine, you see, because women are safe, secure in their home. But what does home mean? When you are working as a woman, As a girl, you're working at home. But every time people called you, they said, come and cook, come and take care of elderly, come and take care of children. And the office was not happy about this. They said, these are not your, family hours. They are your working hours. And many of them, experienced violence because they said, people, I'm not generalizing, but there were instances of, their bosses calling them at 12 o'clock in the middle of the night or 11:30. Come on to the video call. Let me see what dress you are wearing. So you see, there is a subtle feeling of violence. That is why, you have to look at every issue from a gender angle, and that is called gender sensitivity. Sensitivity simply means you have to ask some questions. You see, many times, look at the way people refer to the the female sex. What kind of language do they use? They insult men by using female reference points, and they insult women by using, very loose kind of language. There is no respect there. Affection is one thing, but you use respectful language. You see, because gender stereotypes are such that it gives control of the female sexuality, female body, female mind, female life to men. And look at the way most young women behave. Their lives are all controlled by patriarchy, which can include women also. I'm not saying no, which can include women. But for women, there are always boundaries, where you say this far you can go, this is what you can do. You may be anybody. You see, there is a word called glass ceiling, which means in corporate world, in many of these jobs that are very well paying, women go only up to a certain point. They're not allowed to go higher because, you see, they are wives first, mothers first, daughters first. They can't do that. So all around you, you see gender in operation. You see it in your family, you see it in your school or college, you see it in the bus stop, you see it in your workplace, you see it in the street, you see it in society at large, you see it in politics, you see it in economy, everywhere you see. So this is what is called gender, looking at gender from a multidimensional perspective. See, you cannot understand gender from a monodimensional approach, looking at it only as if it is talking of biology. See, have you ever heard anybody nowadays say women are the weaker sex? No, that has been consciously pushed out. We don't say that. They are not weak. Who said they are weak? If at all, they experience weakness, it is because gender, cultural values and practices deprive them of equal opportunities. You see, you must have heard of this Nobel Prize winning economist, Amartya Sen. Amartya Sen and his associates, long back this was, conducted surveys in India, Bangladesh, and many of those developing countries. And they made a very, very poignant, they came to a poignant conclusion which said, women eat last, women eat the least, and women eat the least nutritious food. For those of us who come from comfort zones, middle class families, upper middle class, or even whatever, we laugh at this. Is it possible? But the truth is that in allocation of resources of this society, food, maybe economic, maybe power, maybe anything, there is inequality between men and women. Some people by choice may eat last, but you look at the cultural ethos, the cultural scenario in many societies, women don't eat first. You're not supposed to leave your male members, your children, even if you're hungry, they will say don't eat because you have to wait. So gender operates itself in many forms. Many times people are not aware of it because they have accepted it. They are taken for granted and they don't question. So what is gender sensitivity? Gender sensitivity means you are conscious. You see, gender sensitivity is about developing a consciousness about the way gender operates in society. Not everybody protests. People, the moment you start asking questions, the moment you start protesting, they will say, look at her, she is a nuisance. She is a troublemaker. In Kannada, they say, banbittu nam nemdi haal ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂತ, which means in English, these people come and ruin our peace of mind. But please remember that it is only because some people asked questions. Some people created movements. Some people attacked all those age-old meaningless practices that we are able to lead such comfortable lives today. I always tell my students, actually we are very fortunate that we are going on often on many clear paths. But think of what our mothers, our grandmothers, and many men who led the women's movement in the 19th century earlier, what did they do? They faced a lot of protest, hardship, and in all religions, in all streams of thought, there were men and women who raised these questions because they were gender sensitive. They were angry at the way women were being treated. They were angry with the way women were being pushed to the background. They were angry with the ignorant world in which women were pushed and kept as, literally slaves. If you look at religious texts, in all religions, I'm saying, if you look at all those traditional sources of knowledge, it's all a matter of interpretation. Women never had access to knowledge. They were not allowed to read. They were not allowed to listen to, the scriptures in all religions. They were not allowed to do so many things. They were not allowed to ask questions. Why? Come to think of it, it is only a gender sensitive person who can ask the question and say, why should I not read? Why should I not ask questions? Why are you telling me to do this? And whenever there is a decision, maybe policy, maybe programs, earlier when new policies started coming into India, it was only again in the 1980s, that people began to think that there was need for looking at policy from a gender sensitive direction. But initially what happened was, when some support was being given to women, it was always like, okay, let her make some pickles, let her sew, let her stitch, let her do this. I'm not saying making pickles and puppets is wrong. Please don't interpret it like that. But if I do that because it's my own choice, it's fine. But you're telling me to do puppets, you're telling me to make pickles only because I'm a woman. That approach, in our development was called welfare approach, where you see, I decide what is good for you. Then coming almost to late 1980s and 90s, the concept of development came into women's, programs and policies. Development said, okay, we will give them 30% of the opportunities, 33% of the opportunities. Let them be there. But till 2000, till the arrival of this century, people did not ask, do you want it? You see, sensitivity is about recognizing women's choice. You are a gender sensitive person means you are recognizing that it is my choice to lead a life in a certain manner. Or many people today use the word empowerment. What does empowerment mean, basically? Empowerment simply means the freedom to make choices. Women's empowerment, the year 2000 was called the year of women's empowerment. So empowerment is you decide, you choose. If it is your choice to be at home, fine. If a male wants to stay at home and doesn't want to go to office, it's fine. But we don't let him also live in peace, right? There also we attack. That is why, in Nordic countries, especially, and I've seen this in Sweden myself, parenting leave is given. Well, in India also they take, where the last 3 or 4 months of parenting leave, 6 months is given to the father, because to make him conscious, to make the father realize that parenting is also his responsibility. Now, we use language without thinking. We behave without thinking. We make fun of others without thinking. So gender sensitivity is about, first questioning inequality based on gender. And now I was talking to you about the LGBTQ community. Today there is a lot of thinking that has gone about the rights of the LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, what you call as sexual minorities. It is their decision. But look at the way this world treats them. And even among women, I told you it's not homogeneous. Look at the situations of the elderly, the disabled, the LGBT, the sex workers, and the unorganized sector labor. When the pandemic hit this world, and when factories shut, the largest number who lost their jobs were women. In the construction industry, in home-based services, in the paramedical, field, they were the ones, major service providers. You look at all the frontline workers, majority are women only. But when it came to giving them the facilities, they never. And, look at the situations in which they were placed. It's very easy for us, those of us who have never experienced that, to sit somewhere and talk about it, But imagine a woman who, because of certain biological conditions, goes through certain experiences and faces more severe hardships because this world is not gender sensitive. I'll just give you one example. You see, when the women's movement way back in 80s and 90s said, in order to bring more girls to school, in order to retain them in school, there should be separate washrooms for girls, separate toilets for girls. And people laughed at us because I was also part of the movement. We started laughing. Look at these people, they are so highly educated, but they are asking for toilet. Is education about washrooms or is it about academics? But remember that an adolescent girl, in certain stages of their lives, the female biology, that is what I call sexuality, is such that they require some separate support, separate places. So many girls stopped coming to school, not because they were not interested. The typical theory I remember was that, they are not interested. Their parents want to get them married and these people don't want to come to school. Very easily they would say. But today, see, the whole admission pattern has changed. And now the state itself is making special efforts to see that schools, especially, co-education schools, which are in the largest number in this country, are equipped with separate washrooms, separate common rooms for young adolescent girls because they need that space. Simple as that. So this is being gender sensitive. You know, there are so many programs for school teachers. You say back to the community, Ba Marali Shalege. You know, you say people have to go back and live in the community. Where should they live? And I'm not suggesting that men don't require safe and sound sanitation. But imagine a woman who has to stay the night in a school building or somewhere, you know, who doesn't even have privacy. What should she do? So when they refuse to go, people will say, okay, you know, women, you see, they are like that only. They are not like that, but there is always a certain kind of demand that biology puts on certain, on females. And so understand, look at the world from their position. You say, okay, you know, look what migration did to women during COVID. Migration was it was a terrible experience. People walking with young children, with you know, like with luggage, with suitcases. Of course, they did arrange trains, etc. I'm not saying no to that, but when they stayed, you know, this happened when tsunami, you see, hit the coastal belt. This happened when all those epidemics broke out. See, they, because of their sexuality, because of their biology, experienced so much discomfort. And let me make myself very clear. I'm not arguing that only females should have access to comfort zones, but they required that special private space. When there were floods, you know, in many parts of our own state or many other states, which were much worse, who was most affected? And so you will see that in order to create an equal society, in order to create an equal world, in order to, you know, bridge that gap on the basis of gender that exists in our society, you have to have gender sensitivity. At the most, what will people tell you? They'll say, she always creates trouble or he always creates trouble. I'm not saying that only women are gender sensitive. No. Gender sensitivity is a human trait which anybody can have. And the worst sufferers during the pandemic are the LGBTQ, elderly, the disabled. And among the disabled, among elderly, for example, women suffered the most. Because you see, there is a you know, framework called the dependence framework, in which you have to understand and analyze women's situations. Many of them were without jobs. The largest number of elderly women, you know, are in rural areas. And they don't have that economic support. So think of it, the whole idea of gender sensitivity is to create what we call an inclusive world. You know, today we are using words like inclusion. Inclusion is a very critical word because you need to take everybody into the fold. You know, that is what is meant by inclusion. Now, reservation, for example, you know, only a gender sensitive, even the women's movement, let me tell you very honestly, initially was not for reservation of seats for women in political, governance bodies. But they said, why? If I, you know, I have the capacity, I'll fight my battle and get the power. But they realized over a period of time that what is really open, you only if you are gender sensitive, you will understand this. what looks open is not always open. Many times, because being in the movement, we have seen, okay, no problem, you can contest, you can go, you can do that, you are free. But you see, the female biology of a woman, which is vulnerable for sexual attacks, comes in the way of this person exercising her right. Often they are told, okay, go, let me see how you will contest. I will take care of you. And that's how, they just backtrack and withdraw. So you have the right, you have the privilege, you have the freedom, but only when it gets translated into action. That is why, today, the gender sensitivity, when you talk of sensitivity, see, you have to try and understand the difference between equality and equity. There are two terms, equality and equity. What is the difference? Equality, yes, it is there. As I have already told you in the beginning, we are all equal. But equity comes, only a gender sensitive person will understand this. Equity comes when that equality translates itself into action. What is the use of having a right if I'm not able to enjoy that right? It's only when, my right becomes a reality. That is why we also in gender studies are using the word today called entitlement. My freedom is my entitlement. My choice is my entitlement. If I decide that it's okay, enough, this is enough for me and this is what I want to do, that's fine. But if I want to do something and I'm prevented from doing it because I am a woman, a sexual minority, or a poor man or a poor male, whatever my situations may be, that is gender inequality. So we can go on talking about this. But in the ultimate analysis, what is gender sensitivity? In every institution, say gender, you can be gender sensitive only when you understand the way gender divides people. Gender creates inequality. Gender limits our spaces or widens our spaces. Gender gives us opportunities. Gender takes away opportunities. So equality is when, in theoretically, yes, I have told you repeatedly, we have no problems. But in translating that equality into reality, that can happen only when there is equity, when there is entitlement, when there is inclusion. When I'm not going to be let off, because I have a female body. That is entitlement. When I will exercise my right, when it's not going to be abused. And when this society, I remember this case, you see, in a Bangalore school, I'm sure many of you will also be familiar with this. In a Bangalore school, there was this little girl, you see, no, I'm sorry, this is in some village. And this happened in many Bangalore schools also, as all of us know. In a village, there was a teacher, who raped, sexually abused a second standard kid. And the village was very angry about this. When they protested, when they demanded that that teacher must be sacked and punished, we were horrified when the person concerned, the education department, including the minister and others who were in charge, said, oh, we have to look at the service rules. I remember writing, you see, service rules were formed years ago. Then, teachers did not behave like this. But this is a clear act of sexual abuse or rape, as we call it. And there is a rape law in the country. Why do you need to see whether service rules permit or don't permit? A gender sensitive person would have said, look, there is the rape law and you punish this person. But they didn't do that. What did they do? They transferred this person from one school to another, and that was also a school with girls. Do you know whom is going to hit such incidents? It will again hit girls' education, because parents will start feeling threatened. Because these are girls who come from poor, vulnerable families. They don't have that economic support required to go by bus, get picked up. This has happened even to children in comfort zones. So parents will say, okay, no, we don't want to send our daughters to school. So when they keep their daughters at home, they will either, send them for wage work, wait, get them married, and that's the end of life. So gender sensitivity is a very conscious feeling. You have to be extremely conscious. You have to be on your mind has to be very alert. Some people use language very loosely, and many people keep quiet, but you should not keep quiet. See, only a gender sensitive person can ask questions. Because this society is patriarchal. The language is male biased. Knowledge, until recently was all male biased. And even today it is. To a large extent in many places. To introduce a course on women's studies or gender studies, many universities and many departments and many disciplines were not ready. Let me tell you, I will say this openly. That, they said, no, that's not necessary. You see, why should we create a gender sensitive generation? We argued you should create a gender sensitive generation. Oh, no, we can't include it in maths, we can't include it in botany, we can't include it here, there, all kinds of excuses. No, if you are conscious. See, I always consciously say he and she, or she and he, or say they, which includes all genders. Oh, all this argument about he will take care of she will take care of, no. Is it so important? Yes, it is. To show this world, to create a generation which recognizes, which makes them understand that this world is based on mutual respect. I may not do certain things, but then you don't have to take it as disadvantage. Somebody may do certain things. He may be a male who can do certain things which are considered typically female, Who decided what is female and what is male? Who decided? This society decided. It is a construct. So take any field, it is there. And, gender is used to pull you back. We have to be very careful, not develop that false consciousness. But we have to be proud of our identity. Only a sensitive person can be proud of his or her identity. So before I end, I would say, gender is a very it is like any other form of inequality. You see, when gender, the last thing I want to say and stop, and, I'll be happy to take questions if you have any for me. I want to say that in an unequal society, one form of inequality, mixes with the other and intensifies. You see, when gender, intersects with caste, when gender intersects with religion, when gender intersects with poverty, when gender intersects with location, when gender, joins hands with other forms of inequality, its negative impact is felt all the more severely. That is why whenever you are talking, you shouldn't never isolate issues. You should always, intertwine. Health, for example, you see, the COVID period, as we call it, has resulted in, at least according to a report that has been released by WHO recently, there have been 30 million unwanted pregnancies. And they say in India itself, this number, will shock everybody. Why? What do you mean by unwanted? See, I told you, when girls drop out of school, they are at home. Parents don't want to keep them at home, so they get them married. And when they get married, the childbearing, child rearing, familial responsibilities start off at an early age. Okay, what can you do about it? I don't like to end it on a negative note. Let me tell you, what can we do about it? Because I'm sure we are all coming generally from a world that is okay, little more comfortable, I would say, than many others' lives. There are many amongst us who can share institutional resources, who can share individual resources in our own professions, in our own fields, in our own neighborhoods. See, the COVID situation or tsunami or whatever, our typical reaction is to blame the state. Our typical reaction is to say, okay, the government, what is the government doing? What are we doing? In my own small way, I can help, I can share, I can create a facility. That is why that's what we mean when we say civil society, the society around us, the neighborhood, the street, starting from our streets, starting from our own, social networks, as I call them, they are very important. So gender sensitivity, as I told you, is something that is to be created from a very, very young age. When you are conscious of insensitivity, you become sensitive. When you are conscious of inequality, your respect for equality grows. When you are conscious of injustice, you fight for justice. So gender sensitivity is a combination of the fight against inequality, the fight against injustice, the fight against all wrongs that are being done to different genders based only on a person's, biological makeup. So I think I'll stop here. I just shared with you some of my thoughts, and thank you very much for this opportunity. It was great pleasure being with you. I'll be happy to, as I said, take questions if you have any and listen to your, of course, thoughts and points of view. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Thank you for giving us a clear picture of what exactly a gender sensitivity is, and not gender sensitivity is, and giving a picture of equality and equity. So now I request the participants, if you have any doubts or any questions, need to give any feedback, you can please raise your hands so that we can unmute you. Any participants need to ask any question, give a feedback? You can unmute yourself.
Am I audible?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Aisha. First of all, I would like to thank Principal for giving us the opportunity to hear Indira Madam. It was a very resourceful talk, Madam.
Thank you.
I am a PhD scholar from Reva University.
Okay.
And my topic on thesis is something relevant to your subject, Madam.
Okay. What is it?
It's quite relevant with the gender sensitization. You spoke very well, and I really feel very very thankful to you, because I have included many such important facts that you have highlighted today. You spoke about the society which is divided, and then You spoke about the imposed identity, then the multidimensional angle towards the approach to the society. Ma'am, only one point I wanted to ask you about this.
Okay.
You highlighted about equality and equity. Equity can be developed only when it is translated in the mind.
Yeah.
That point I think I have not included in my thesis. A very interesting subject that first of all, it has to be mentally awakened in our thought that equality can be developed only when there is mentally translated into our thoughts.
Yeah.
There is one more point, ma'am, I wanted to just know. There is something about conscious and unconsciousness you have included, because gender sensitization can be created only when there is consciousness in the mind.
Yes, exactly.
I have included Sigmund Freud's theory of psychoanalysis in my thesis. Now, to the college level students, if we have to awaken this consciousness, like what kind of programs or what kind of awareness thing we can create, ma'am?
Thank you for that question. We have, tried doing this. You're very right when you say that only when there is a consciousness that somebody is experiencing gender inequality or, in his or her surroundings. One way of doing this is by asking people, to identify the way gender inequality manifests itself in their families, in their textbooks, in their school life, in their street, in the, especially children, because that's the age in which you start putting the right values into their mind. So ask them, give them some examples. There are nice books that have come out. There are very nice exercises, what you call as something like when you get them into a group, let them talk or tell them, to identify in their own families, because a large number of our children still spend a lot of time with their families. So see, between you and your sister, between you and your brother, between your mother and father, between an elderly people in your family, just tell them and they will definitely start identifying. The first step to sensitivity is identifying inequality. That's one way of doing it. But there are excellent books, in all languages that have now been brought out to use as material for sensitizing children to issues of gender inequality. It's all available in the net. You can just take and check.
Thank you, ma'am. I think you have given this identification in order to make it a boon for the students to understand the concept of consciousness.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Asma. Now, madam, we have another question by Dr. M.S. Vidya.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Ma'am.
Yeah, namaskara. Hello.
This question may be very harsh, I don't know exactly.
Okay.
What I see nowadays is for gender sensitivity or sensitization or for the women empowerment, whatever we say, is motherhood obstructing the development or the flourishing of women, whatever, women development or empowering the women? I don't know. I know this is such a basic question. Maybe it's not.
No, actually, it's a very good question. Thank you for asking me. I'll tell you that motherhood, it's felt, those who feel that motherhood obstructs development feel so because I would rather use the word parenthood. It is not shared. Generally, you see, the mother is made to feel that she's the one who has to give her time and her energies to the child. Actually, I would look at motherhood as a strength because, there are all these notions of, that's why when we say women are biologically weak, I would question that because I think women motherhood itself is a very hard task. And it's not so easy to bear children, rear children, socially, culturally, take all that which comes on. So and motherhood, I think, has been used by society to keep women away from development. Writers like Frederick Engels, Morgan, you see, all of them are talking about it. They say, when groups of men and groups of women lived together in hunter-gatherer economies, there was nothing like my child and my family and your family. In fact, Frederick Engels says, monogamy itself is the beginning of women's oppression. That's what they write. Even radical feminists are saying that you use the family, the motherhood, etc., to suppress women. But when the notion of parenting comes, there was a very nice study which was carried out by groups of researchers coming from multidisciplinary, backgrounds, biology, medicine, then sociology, psychology, all that. After a long, it's all research based, they found that, you see, what does a young little child need? The infant, as in the process of growing up, they said the child needs a human body, another human body, because you feel comfortable that there is somebody. But where has it been said that that body should be only that of a woman? Why can't a father, I have met many men, oh, my child doesn't even come to me. So I ask, are you calling your child in the first place? You see, there is always, I have felt there is this dichotomy between power and responsibility. It's very easy to exercise power. People say, oh, my children are so scared of me. Why? And also many women do this, power is to be equally exercised. There are many women that I've seen, oh, let your father come. This Freud, has talked about this in another manner. Let your father come, I will report. But why don't you punish yourself? Because, you are taking care of this kid, you're doing so much. So you see, the world of men and women, the division takes place in the family by this differential role allocation. And, when, as I said, going back to what Morgan, the anthropologist, and said people lived together, children were a collective responsibility. There is no fatherhood, motherhood, and all that. It's only when people human communities started living in one place, they started growing food, then the concept of my land, my family, my wife, my husband, my children started. So they feel that this was the beginnings of exploitation. And motherhood was used by this society to keep the mother away from active social life. It happened because temporarily, probably because those days, early days, no childcare centers, all those, even today, not many people have access. The mother temporarily stayed back at home. Now that temporary withdrawal from active life was used to create the impression that motherhood, is a burden. But I won't accept that.
So many of women, what I see is, because when they become mother, maybe nobody else look after the child.
Yeah.
So they stay back. They leave the jobs and they sacrifice the
exactly.
children.
Yeah.
That's what I'm seeing nowadays. It's both a boon and a bane, I think. That's what I feel nowadays.
Yeah, because many men look, the culturally, you see, there is a system created where it's okay for a woman to give up her job. It's okay for a woman to reject promotion. There was a bank which once stopped giving promotions to women because but that is not at all the right approach, because they are not going because the husband doesn't go. It's okay for the man to go and the woman to follow. See, our ideas are completely controlled by patriarchy, gender stereotype. But when you start opposing that, when you start, I have a strong feeling, I don't know whether what do you think about this? We really lack role models, our younger generation lacks role models. So when, these alternate role models come up in large numbers, I am sure society will change. I don't want to go to that old saying, ayo, it will take another. No, it will not take 100 years. It's already started happening. And women also should become, see, the first thing I suppose what most women make a mistake is they start feeling guilty very easily. It's okay for a man not to do certain things, to go away when somebody is sick, when somebody requires support. It's not good for women. So I think I always have been telling young women, don't feel guilty. See that burdens at home are shared. See that your responsibilities are jointly handled. Then I suppose you create a more equal family, a more equal society. This is my feeling.
Thanks so much.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, madam.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Anybody? Any more questions? So we have come to the end of the session. Now I request our IQAC coordinator, Dr. M.S. Vidya madam, to propose vote of thanks.
Thank you, Nuresh ma'am. Ellarigu namaskaralu. A very good afternoon to one and all. I, Dr. M.S. Vidya, IQAC coordinator and HOD of Kannada, am privileged to propose vote of thanks for this thought-provoking webinar. The only prayer you ever say in your entire life is thank you. It will be enough. It was very enlightening webinar which gave deep insights into the topic and revealed interesting facts. First of all, I would like to extend my gratitude to Mr. Farooq Mahmood, Vice President of CMA Karnataka and Chairman and MD of Silverline Group for inaugurating the 3 days FTP. I thank you, sir, on behalf of everyone for your encouraging words and making yourself free amidst your busy schedule. Thank you once again. Here, I like to quote a few lines from Martin Luther King, very inspiring words. An individual man has not started living until he rises above the confines of his individualistic concern to the broader concerns of humanity. This was written by Mr. Martin Luther King and is well suited for today's resource person, Professor Indira Madam, the torchbearer of this event, a scholar, teacher, social worker, guide, and above all, a true human being who is down to earth in nature in spite of all accolades she has received. As we say in Kannada, Tumbida Kada Tulukudilla.
No, thank
We are
you.
very
kind
grateful.
of you.
No, ma'am, we are very grateful for accepting our invitation and sparing your valuable time by sharing innovative and contemporary ideas on this topic and motivating us a lot. On behalf of the management, principals, faculty, college, on behalf of participants, and on my own behalf, I thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I sincerely appreciate our esteemed members of management for their continuous and untiring support to all our endeavors. I thank our principal, who is a constant support for all of us and a guiding spirit. Madam, please accept my deepest thanks for welcoming and introducing our esteemed guests. Thank you once again on behalf of everyone. I fail in my duty if I do not thank the participants without whom this webinar would not have been successful. I thank you one and all for actively participating and encouraging us to do more programs. An event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheels started rolling weeks ago. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a team of motivated and dedicated colleagues who are result-oriented. I thank my team, Dr. S.D. Saida Tabasum and Ms. Noor Aisha, and members of IQAC for making this happen. I also extend my gratitude to all the faculty members for their support. Finally, I want to thank one and all who are behind this successful program. Dhanyavadagalu. Thanks. And please do join. Thanks a lot, ma'am. And everyone, please
My pleasure. Thank you. And nan number athwa email bekadre some, I think if you want, please do give, no problem. Please do share, na? It's fine with me.
Yes. If anybody wants to ask or discuss anything with madam, the number will be provided to you. You can talk to her personally. And I request all of you to attend tomorrow and day after tomorrow webinars also. Thank you. Thanks once again.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
I request all the participants to join for the tomorrow's session about cybercrime. So thank you for all the participants to joining today. Thank you, madam.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, ma'am.
Thank you
And
so
thank
much.
you all the participants. See you again tomorrow at the same time, 2:30.